Sup, you beautiful bastards. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, you daily dive into the news. It is Monday, February 9th. I am outside right now. We're going to try and do the show. Oh, hi. There we go.
Welcome to the show.
Here we go. My wife thought she could tell you guys secrets, like I don't control the edit. But hey, yes, welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show. I've got a fantastic show for you today. It is obviously, as you can tell by, I guess this is a throne. Today's show is coming to you from the road, specifically Cocoa Beach, Florida. That's because I'm a genius and I booked a non-refundable place to stay for the Artemis 2 launch. You know, a thing that famously, it couldn't be postponed because of the slightest change in weather or a test not going 100% perfect. Space travel, of course, famously known for the lack of uncertainty. So I decided to still steal my wife and kids away for a little break before everything gets really chaotic, especially for her with the campaign. But, you know, with that said, we have a lot we need to talk about today, starting with this. Kash Patel is a shameless bootlicking liar, and he has to absolutely know it, right? But that's essentially the big takeaway from this New York Times bombshell report about what happened just hours after Jonathan Ross shot Renee Good in the face. Because reportedly, a senior prosecutor by the name of Joseph Thompson sought a warrant to search her vehicle for evidence in what he expected would be a standard civil rights investigation into the agent's use of force. Or with him emailing colleagues that state authorities who specialize in police shootings would team up with the FBI on the probe. But you've got several sources saying that later that week, as FBI agents equipped with a signed warrant prepared to document blood spatter and bullet holes in the car, they received orders to stop. And who did those orders come from, you might ask? Well, reportedly it was senior officials, including the FBI director himself, Kash Patel. And you had sources saying that several of them, they worried that a civil rights investigation by using a warrant obtained on that basis would contradict Trump's claim that Good violently, willfully, and viciously ran over Jonathan Ross. Or, you know, in other words, that the facts would just expose the regime's lies. And so instead, over the next few days, top Trump DOJ officials, they reportedly presented alternative approaches, such as, you know, seeking a warrant predicated on a criminal investigation, not into whether Ross's use of force was justified, but into whether he had been assaulted by Good. Or another idea, they could just ditch the probe into the shooting altogether and instead investigate Good's partner who was there the day that she got shot. And with that, according to the Times, Thompson and several other prosecutors, they balked at these ideas, just like kind of any sane human would, viewing them as legally dubious and incendiary. Hell, even lawyers who thought that the shooting might have been lawful, they wanted an investigation into the use of force. And so Thompson and 5 others, they quit, at which point AG Pam Bondi told Fox News that they were members of the deep state who suddenly decided they didn't want to support the men and women of ICE. And then she actually took the extra step of formally firing them, even though they had already resigned, which deprived them of months of paid leave that they had accumulated. But then after that, the dam broke, with more and more lawyers ditching the office, and now even the chief counsel for ICE in Minnesota leaving. Retentions in the office, they're so high that staff say that the U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, a commercial litigator with no prior experience in criminal law, has made unsettling comments about how he wouldn't ask anyone to do anything illegal, which is an assurance that would normally go without saying. But also, you know, other Democratic states, they're watching what's happening in Minnesota and going, yeah, we don't want any of that shit. And so now you're seeing them batten down the hatches, with Zoran Mamdani leading the charge and reasserting New York's status as a sanctuary city.
Across this country, day after day, we bear witness to cruelty that staggers the conscience. ICE is more than a rogue agency. It is a manifestation of the abuse of power. We will make it clear once again that ICE will not be able to enter New York City property without a judicial warrant. That means our schools, our shelters, and our hospitals. As ICE fosters a culture of suspicion and fear, let this city of strangers set an example for how to make the sorrows of others our own. Let us offer a new path, one of defiance through compassion.
But then almost immediately, a DHS mouthpiece, Tricia McLaughlin, responding with, Mamdani will make New Yorkers less safe as a direct result of this policy. And she demanded that he, quote, agree to release criminals in New York City's custody to ICE before they are released back to the Big Apple streets to victimize and prey on more Americans. And while Trump himself has bit his tongue on Mamdani so far, last month he threatened to cut funding for all sanctuary jurisdictions unless they change their laws by February 1st. Though for whatever reason, maybe dementia, maybe something else, that deadline, it came and went with no cuts. Also very notably, last week you had Politico reporting that the Department of Transportation had actually drafted a proposal that would halt transit funding to any major city offering free bus service. Now, a big thing is that would have to be approved by Congress, but it does come as an apparent dig at Mamdani's signature free bus proposal, and you've had New Yorkers just worried for months about the prospect of Trump cutting off other funds to the city. Right? Because they do depend on federal cash for a lot of things: healthcare, homelessness, education, transit hubs, the Second Avenue subway station project, and so on. And in fact, Trump already froze billions of dollars in funding for the Hudson River Gateway project that would connect New York City with New Jersey suburbs through a pair of train tunnels. And actually, it was reported last month month that he reached out to Chuck Schumer and said, hey, I'll restore the funding on one condition. Just agree to rename Penn Station and Dulles International Airport after me. Just very normal and not at all pathetic uses of presidential power. But then to that, Schumer was reportedly like, one, that's unhinged, and two, I don't have the authority to do that even if I wanted to. And in the meantime, both New York and New Jersey, they've sued the White House with a judge ordering Trump to unfreeze the funds while the case proceeds. And while that covers Minnesota and New York, we then got to jump over to Texas, where, in the words of Chris Murphy, Trump's baby prison, it's still a house of horrors. With more than 750 families, nearly half including children, as well as some 370 single adult women currently holed up inside of the infamous Dilley detention facility. And now we can actually hear from several of those children themselves because ProPublica obtained their letters and drawings, and they're just heartbreaking. Right, with one 12-year-old boy writing, they told me I could only be here 21 days, but I have already spent more than 60 days waking up eating the same repetitive meals, going outside, and the majority of guards never pay attention to people, eating dinner always the same as the day before, seeing people cry every day for the same reasons, trying to sleep in that horrible, uncomfortable bed, going to the doctor, and that the only thing they tell you is to drink more water. And the worst thing is that it seems like the water is what makes people sick here, going to wait for the bad answers from the judges, hearing the bad news from people who no longer have hope, having to share a room with minimum 3 families, and all that so they can send us back to our countries. You then also had a 9-year-old girl writing, I always traveled with my tourist visa, but ICE used me to catch my mom, and now I am in jail, and I am sad, and I have fainted 2 times here inside. When I arrived, every night I cried, and now I don't sleep well. I felt that being here was my fault, and I only wanted to be on vacation like a normal family. Right, and then you had this 14-year-old girl named Ariana reading her own letter aloud in a recording.
Since I got to this center, all you will feel is sadness and mostly depression. I remind myself that once I go back to Honduras, a lot of dangerous things could happen to my mom and I. My younger siblings haven't been able to see their mom in more than a month. I haven't been getting any school time either, or the other kids in here. All kids are being damaged mentally. They witness how their parents and other people are being treated.
But also with this, you know what, like one of the craziest things about it is? While the Trump administration is deporting these little kids to purge the country of foreigners, it's allegedly covering up this mysterious phone call involving Donald Trump and foreign intelligence. Right, you may remember that last week, the Wall Street Journal revealed that a whistleblower had accused intelligence director Tulsi Gabbard of burying a highly classified report that she was legally required to disclose to Congress. And that was back in May, and now the whistleblower's attorney told The Guardian what the report was about, saying that last spring, the NSA flagged an unusual phone call, and at first, the attorney told the outlet that it was between someone associated with foreign intelligence and someone close to Trump. And with the attorney reportedly confirming that account multiple times. But then, after the article was published, he went, hold on, I misspoke, saying that actually the call was between 2 members of foreign intelligence and merely involved someone close to Trump's White House. Right? And then you had another source adding that the person close to Trump is not understood to be an administration official or a special government employee. But whatever the case is, that's really all we know, so it's still very mysterious. But either way, the attorney says that the call was brought to Gabbard's attention, and rather than allowing officials to distribute the information further, she took a paper copy of it directly to Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. Then, the next day, Gabbard allegedly telling the NSA not to publish the report. Instead, she instructed NSA officials to transmit the highly classified details directly to her office. And so for the past 8 months, this report's been just kept secret, even from congressional intelligence committees, which are legally required to be notified of whistleblower complaints. But then, after this whole story broke, those committees' lawmakers got a hold of a heavily redacted version of it. And so far, what you've had is them splitting apart across party lines on whether the whistleblower complaint is credible and whether Gabbard's conduct broke the law. With Tom Cotton in the Senate and Rick Crawford in the House coming to her defense, and Democrats calling for more transparency. But with all of the lies and the secrecy from this White House about everything, Renee Good, Tulsi Gabbard, Jeffrey Epstein, we'll also get to that, Trump wants you to believe that the real slap in the face to this country, it was actually during last night's football game. You also had Trump weighing in on Bad Bunny's halftime performance at the Super Bowl last night, calling it one of the worst ever. Of course, you had many people disagreeing, and it's just one way that we're seeing sports and politics collide right now. Though starting with Bad Bunny, we all know that the choice sparked backlash among a lot of conservatives. And that's even though he wasn't only the world's most played artist on Spotify in 2025, but one of the most popular artists just in the United States. Right, and what you saw is that the criticism stemmed at least in part from the fact that he's from Puerto Rico and he sings almost exclusively in Spanish, with some on the right blasting the pick as anti-American. Though of course, Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory, Bad Bunny is a U.S. citizen, and there are tens of millions of people like him in this country who are native Spanish speakers. But also another part of the backlash has been Bad Bunny's outspoken criticism of Donald Trump and his administration's immigration policies. Right, he previously avoided touring in the United States over fears that his fans would be detained by ICE agents, instead staging a record-breaking residency in Puerto Rico. He also recently blasted ICE while accepting a Grammy Award for Album of the Year.
Before I say thanks to God, I'm gonna say eyes out. We're not savage, we're not animals, we're not aliens, we are humans, and we are Americans. The only thing that is more powerful than hate is love.
So with all that, you had Turning Point USA, that conservative nonprofit that was co-founded by Charlie Kirk, announcing an alternative event dubbed the All-American Halftime Show, saying it would celebrate faith, family, and freedom, and headlining the show was Kid Rock, right, an outspoken Trump supporter whose 2001 track Cool Daddy Cool features the lyrics, young ladies, I like 'em underage. Some say that's statutory, but I say it's mandatory. With Kid Rock and TPUSA really not doing themselves any favors to combat the Epstein class allegations. But despite that, you had tons of right-wingers saying they'd be tuning in, or at the very least, they wouldn't be watching the official show. And that included professional douchebag Jake Paul, of all people, who actually lives in Puerto Rico and who you had slamming the halftime show just a few hours before it happened. Where Jake urging his followers to boycott the performance, saying, let's rally together and show big corporations they can't just do whatever they want without consequences. Also, he called Bad Bunny a, quote, fake American citizen who publicly hates America, though there you had his brother Logan responding to that post, writing, I love my brother, but I don't agree with this. Puerto Ricans are Americans, and I'm happy they were given the opportunity to showcase the talent that comes from the island. So there you also had Democratic lawmaker Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez firing back, writing, a fake American citizen? Didn't you move to Puerto Rico to avoid paying your taxes while kids across America go hungry? Meanwhile, Benito actually funds low-income kids' access to arts and sports programs while you defund them. Of course you're mad. He makes you look small. And the backlash actually got so big that you had Paul trying to walk it back, claiming that he wasn't calling Bad Bunny a fake citizen because he's Puerto Rican, but because of his, quote, values and criticism of our great country. With him then following that up, saying, guys, I love Bad Bunny. I don't know what happened on my Twitter last night. What the fuck? Which, if you don't know him, I think you should take as him kind of winking and giving you the middle finger while he's writing that, instead of actually saying he doesn't know what's happening. But with that bullshit aside, when it came to the actual show last night, it was almost inevitably political in some ways, though I will say he also didn't directly criticize Trump or the administration. Right in the performance, it's been seen more as a celebration of Puerto Rico and Latin America, or with fellow Puerto Rican artist Ricky Martin, for example, covering one of Bad Bunny's songs, and Lady Gaga delivering a salsa-style version of one of her own. You also had Latino celebrity cameos like Cardi B and Pedro Pascal appearing on stage. There was also an honest-to-God wedding in the middle of the performance, with Bad Bunny serving as a witness and signing their marriage certificate. Also, I gotta mention this other viral moment, which was when we saw his Grammy acceptance speech playing on a small TV as a young boy watched and then was handed the award. Because you had a lot of people online speculating that that boy was actually Liam Ramos, that 5-year-old who was detained by ICE in Minneapolis, but I'm here to tell you that is just not true. That was just a different child altogether. But really, the most explicit political messaging that we heard came in the form of a call for unity. Bad Bunny shouted, God bless America, before naming most countries in South, Central, and North America, all the way from Argentina to Canada. And then you had him holding a football with the words, together we are America, while the massive screen behind him read, the only thing more powerful than hate is love. Right, and then, even though you had all these people saying they wouldn't be watching the show, they apparently still had a lot to say about it afterwards, including Donald Trump. Or with Trump saying that it was absolutely terrible and one of the worst ever, also claiming it was an affront to the greatness of America and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence, and adding, nobody understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching throughout the USA and all over the world, saying this show is just a slap in the face to our country, which is setting new standards and records every single day. You also had the likes of far-right influencer and Trump barnacle Laura Loomer taking it in the direction of just explicit racism, baselessly claiming that there were illegal aliens and Latin hookers twerking at the Super Bowl, and then adding not a single white person or English translation at the Super Bowl. This isn't white enough for me. Can't even watch a Super Bowl anymore because immigrants have literally ruined everything. You also had right-wing grifter Benny Johnson piling on, complaining that no songs were in our language and claiming the NFL halftime show was a humiliation ritual to debase American culture on a national stage. He then also went on to talk about how thankful he is that TPUSA put on a show that was just feel-good banger after banger from American artists who love this country and who football fans can relate with. And actually, with that, along with right-wingers shitting on this widely praised Bad Bunny performance, you also had them arguing that they even clearly won the battle of the halftime shows. So the truth there is that there's very little evidence of that. We don't have the official viewing numbers for Bad Bunny yet, but if history is any indication, it'll be over 100 million. Meanwhile, the All-American halftime show reportedly pulled a little over 6 million live viewers at its peak, although it streamed on some other platforms. Also with it, you had one popular right-wing account claiming X usage got so high during the TPUSA All-American halftime show, the platform was down for brief moments. But there, as many pointed out, and as TPUSA itself announced, that the real reason they had to cut off the X stream was licensing restrictions. Also with this, there have been two other big topics. You've had a lot of people accusing them of using bots to inflate their view numbers. And among those being vocal about that, you had Candace Owens, which, not the most surprising. She's been a vocal turning point critic since Kirk's assassination. And in addition to botting allegations, she kind of came out against both halftime shows. Writing on Twitter, I am sorry, but I hate both options. On the one hand, we have a halftime show presented without a word of English spoken. But then adding, on the other hand, we have an organization that scammed its views by paying platform advertisers, followed by influencers to pretend they broke records. A left versus right grift is actually boring now. What exactly are we doing here in America? And while it's not entirely clear what she's on about in terms of people being paid, that wasn't the only issue that others found with the show. Right? You had some noting that Kid Rock appeared to be lip syncing through at least some of his performance, which some have argued also appeared to be pre-taped. And while in this performance you didn't have Kid Rock singing his lyrics about a preference for underage girls, it's still hard to argue that all of his lyrics were family friendly. There was people noting that one of his songs referenced topless dancers and G's with the 40s and the chicks with beepers. So still, you had some influencers on that side claiming Kid Rock brought millions closer to Jesus. And actually, that same guy who has over 600,000 followers on Twitter reshared Trump's post and added, President Trump is always right, and also suggesting that Trump should be made the new commissioner of the NFL. You know, ultimately, it's this type of total sycophantic loyalty that the MAGA movement seems to increasingly demand, even at the expense of reality. That's been on full display at the Winter Olympics with, I mean, just to start, you had Vice President J.D. Vance getting booed during the opening ceremony, which just, that is a fact, right? It happened. Not everyone booed, but it was audible and it was sustained, and it's been confirmed by reporters on the scene, as well as feeds from international broadcasters like the BBC and CBC.
There is the Vice President J.D. Vance and his wife Usha. Ooh, those are a lot of boos for him. Whistling, jeering, some applause.
But despite all that, you still had MAGA accounts saying, hey, you know, whatever you think you hear with your own ears, Vance wasn't actually booed. In fact, some of them said that the crowd roared and the cheers were even louder than for Italy. And then with that, you had some sharing the NBC broadcast where you can't really hear the booing, which has actually led to the network having to fight off allegations that it edited the audio. But then also, despite that bit, another big part of all this is the criticism that athletes are facing from even Donald Trump himself for showing the slightest disagreement with his administration's policies. And so, for example, at a press conference a few days ago, you had skiers on the U.S. team responding to questions about what's going on back at home in the U.S. And with that, you had two-time Olympian and gold medalist Chris Lillis saying that, you know, he'd never want to represent a different country, but adding,
I feel heartbroken about what's happened in the United States when, you know, I'm pretty sure you're referencing ICE and some of the protests and things like that. I think that as a country, we need to focus on respecting everybody's rights and making sure that we're treating our citizens as well as anybody with love and respect. And I hope that when people look at athletes compete in the Olympics, they realize that that's the America that we're trying to represent.
You then also had first-time Olympian Hunter Hess adding,
it brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't. Just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that's going on in the U.S. So yeah, I just kind of want to do it for my friends and my family and the people that support me getting here.
In those comments, they triggered a wave of outrage from those on the right who say that, hey, athletes should just stay quiet. For some arguing that because they're not repeating Trump propaganda or just staying quiet, they should be sent back home immediately and should be no longer allowed to represent us. And some saying that they should have their citizenship revoked. And you saw this kind of reaction from top to bottom. I mean, Trump specifically called out Hess in a post on Truth Social yesterday, writing, U.S. Olympic skier Hunter Hess, a real loser, says he doesn't represent his country in the current Winter Olympics. And adding, if that's the case, he shouldn't have tried out for the team, and it's too bad he's on it. Very hard to root for someone like this. Make America great again. But you know, with all that, there are more and more athletes speaking up. And actually, skier Gus Kenworthy, who's competing for the UK but grew up in the US, he's been among the most outspoken. You had him, for example, the other day posting a photo on Instagram showing the words "fuck ICE" peed into the snow with his caption calling on people to call their senator and speak up against the agency. Also, unsurprisingly, you've had him reporting receiving threats online. While many others have made far more mild comments and only in response to questions from reporters, they've still faced similar backlash. Last week, for example, figure skater Amber Glenn, who identifies as pansexual, made comments encouraging LGBTQ plus people to stay strong during what she called a difficult time for the community. But then also, shortly after, she announced that she'd be stepping away from social media after receiving a scary amount of hate/threats for simply using her voice when asked about how I feel. And two-time snowboarding gold medalist Chloe Kim, she's now the latest to come under fire for just calling for more love and compassion, with one of her teammates also saying that she was saddened about what's happening at home. And then there's more we're going to dive into in just a minute. But first, let me thank a sponsor and say, you know, it is 2026 and we are already in February. Like, let that sink in. And if you've been waiting for the, right time to launch your side hustle or business site, that time's now. Because I get it. Building a website, it can feel way bigger than it actually is. But thanks to today's sponsor, Squarespace, my book club, it was a someday project and then it went live in under an hour. Hell, my team even uses Squarespace for our Daily Dip newsletter where tens of thousands of y'all get your PDS fix in your inbox every weekday morning. New polls, giveaways, PDS show notes, all run through Squarespace like clockwork. A Daily Dip newsletter went out this morning and your project could be next. And it really should be, especially because it couldn't be easier to just start showing stuff, selling content, courses, physical or digital products, whatever you're dreaming up, you can do. And something that I know that's big for a lot of people want one-time payments, subscriptions, both done and done. And they're beautiful templates. It makes it look like you hired a designer, and their Fluid Engine editor, it lets you drag, drop, and customize. No coding, no stress, no excuses. So hey, take that first step today with a free trial at squarespace.com/Phil or scan that QR code. Today is launch day. And just remember that when it's ready to go live, use code Phil to get 10% off and let them know we sent you. But then diving right back into the news, we need to talk about this PSA that Epstein survivors released on Super Bowl Sunday, calling out Attorney General Pam Bondi's handling of the files. Because it starts with text noting that even months after the Epstein Files Transparency Act was passed, 3 million files still haven't been released to the public. And with redactions then covering the faces of survivors, they say,
after years of being kept apart, we're standing together.
Standing together.
Because this girl deserves the truth.
Because she deserves the truth.
Because we all deserve the truth.
With it then ending with text urging the viewers to demand that Bondi just tell the truth. And so these women, they made this ad with the help of World Without Exploitation, which also has a petition in support of the survivors right now. And while some reports suggest that it did air in some markets, others say that it was primarily intended to be a digital ad that capitalized on the attention of the Super Bowl. Right, and with that, you had tons of politicians sharing it, saying that it was the most important ad of the day. And also say it comes at a crucial time because starting this week, members of Congress can review the Epstein files unredacted. The files will be made available on computers in a room at the DOJ building, and while lawmakers cannot bring electronics into the room, they are allowed to take notes on what they see. And so you've got Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna going today, with Massie actually asking Americans which files he should prioritize. And among the top responses, you have one file where a redacted email address tells Epstein, "Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty." As well as another email from a redacted address mentioning a torture video and an FBI intake sheet referencing a child's body being buried in New Mexico. And so we're gonna have to wait to see what lawmakers end up saying after viewing the files, if it leads to another push for everything else to be released, and if any major questions actually get answered. Because today, Ghislaine Maxwell was supposed to answer some of those big questions, but gave us nothing. She had a virtual deposition with the House Oversight Committee and ended up pleading the fifth on every single ask. So technically, I guess it is still possible that she might answer questions in the future, though she has one major condition, with her lawyer saying, Mrs. Maxwell is prepared to speak fully and honestly if granted clemency by President Trump. And even saying that Maxwell would provide testimony claiming that both Trump and former President Bill Clinton are innocent of any wrongdoing. But that demand, it's outraged a lot of lawmakers who said that she must immediately be sent back to the maximum security prison where she belongs. You also had others pivoting blame to Donald Trump for not concretely ruling out a pardon for Maxwell.
Ghislaine Maxwell should have no hope of ever getting out of prison. She is campaigning over and over again to get that pardon from President Trump. And this president has not ruled it out. And so that is why she's continuing to not cooperate with our investigation.
This was an effort to essentially try to secure her pardon by keeping her mouth shut.
President Trump could end that today. He could rule out clemency for Ghislaine Maxwell, the monster. He could rule out a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell, the monster. The question for all of us today is, why hasn't he done that, and why won't he do that?
But also I'll add, if you think the Epstein files are creating any sort of political mess over here, you should see what's happening in the UK. We talked a little about this before. Ambassador Peter Mandelson resigned from the Labour Party and House of Lords after portions of the file suggested that he gave Epstein confidential information about the government and economy while in office. And among other things, that's created a major headache for Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Starmer's chief of staff just resigned for having a part in appointing Mandelson to an ambassadorship, saying the decision to appoint Peter Mandelson was wrong. He has damaged our party, our country, and trust in politics itself. Saying, I advise the Prime Minister to make that appointment, and I take full responsibility for that advice. But also, there's a ton of pressure for Keir Starmer himself to resign, and it's unclear if his chief of staff's move is going to help him at all. But that said, Starmer has tried to address the controversy himself, apologizing to victims, saying, I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. But still, you have people, including people in his own party, that want him out. Also in the UK, former Prince Andrew's embroiled in even more scandals in the files, because police are investigating claims that he also gave confidential information to Epstein, which I do have to say, as an American, it is amazing to watch a country take these allegations seriously, because, our president, he's implicated in incredibly disturbing parts of the files, and the odds of him resigning or face any sort of crumb of consequence, they're slim to zero at this point. But then, finally, from that today, we need to talk about how it's been 9 days since Nancy Guthrie went missing, and time's just running out. Because as we talked about last week, the 84-year-old mother of Today's Show anchor Savannah Guthrie first went missing from her home near Tucson, Arizona on February 1st, and law enforcement officials, they believe that she was taken by force. Important personal belongings like her car, keys, phone, and wallet were left behind. There was a trail of her blood found on the porch, and it's unlikely that she wandered away because her mind is sharp, but she has limited mobility. And all the while, you've had local authorities warning that time is of the essence here because Nancy needs to take daily medication or she could die without it. Right? And while as of recording this, law enforcement officials have said they still haven't identified any suspects or persons of interest in the case, over the past week, multiple ransom notes have been sent to various media outlets. Or with the local CNN affiliate KGUN News reporting that it had received a ransom note demanding $6 million in Bitcoin and threatening Nancy's life unless the amount was paid out by today. Though notably with that, that outlet has since deleted videos on social media that mentioned the demand and removed the $6 million figure from its online article. With all this, on Wednesday, you had Savannah Guthrie posting an emotional video alongside her siblings where she acknowledged the reports of ransom notes and said that her family was ready to talk to the kidnappers as long as they could prove that her mom was still alive. But, and it's a key thing here, law enforcement officials have not publicly verified the authenticity of any of these letters. In fact, even had the FBI saying last week that they had determined that one of the ransom notes was sent by an imposter who's now been arrested for sending a fake message in an attempt to profit from the kidnapping. But also, over the weekend, you had Savannah and her siblings posting another video addressing the possible kidnappers and seemingly referencing a specific ransom note.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
And while Guthrie didn't specify which message she was referring to, the FBI has confirmed that she was talking about a message sent to the CBS affiliate KOLD on Friday. But there you have KOLD saying that it won't reveal the contents of that message out of respect for both the family and the investigation. And so we really don't have any idea what demands were made, though you did have an anchor for the station telling CNN that the message included sensitive information and no deadline, and adding that the sender seemed to make an effort to include details that would prove that they were the same person who sent another ransom note earlier in the week. But for now, we're just gonna have to continue watching the situation closely for more answers, and in the meantime, of course, again, our hearts go out to Nancy Guthrie's family, her friends, and loved ones. But that, my friends, is the end of your Monday Philip DeFranco show. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for being a part of another daily dive into the news. And I should see you right back here tomorrow because I'm about to scoop all this stuff into a bag and just bolt to the airport. I love you, faces, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.